time for yet another episode of Made of Metal. This is a place where you come and you listen to me and the handsome fella on the other half of the screen, Jack, talk about all things fitness, all things nutrition, all things exercise, diet, all that good stuff. Jack, how are you doing today?
Doing well. I'm doing well. It's been a busy week as always, but I wouldn't have it any other way. How you been?
True that. Pretty good. I actually got a fantastic, I don't know if you want to call it testimonial, but a fantastic win from a client like an hour ago, and I'm kind of beaming on that.
That's
Um,
a good high to ride.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull it up actually, and we'll read it super quick, and then we'll get in everything for tonight. But this is from one of my newer clients actually. She hasn't been here for very long, but a few months, so enough time to see some notable progress. And I do a thing where I ask people for real wins that are going on in their lives every week. So if it's anything in the gym, if it's just feeling more comfortable or better about staying on track with macros, protein, any of that stuff, right? I don't really focus it on anywhere in particular because I just want to see the wins that people are noticing because I want them to see it for themselves without me leading them to anything. But this one is one of my favorites that I've ever gotten because it has nothing to do with the gym. It has nothing to do with any of the stuff that we actually have clients do. This actually applies to what I consider to be the point of fitness, which is taking everything that you get in the gym strength wise and actually using it outside of the gym in the rest of your life. So, with that said, this review says, I remember Tony, that's this guy right here, talking about how lifting weights will make carrying in groceries a lot easier. My mind immediately went to the 40-pound pellet bags I get from my pellet stove and how it'd be nice to not struggle lugging them in. Today, I was able to carry in 2 bags at a time.
That's awesome.
That makes my heart warm. That makes my heart super warm.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's those little things that normally, whether you didn't have the confidence to do it or you just legitimately did not have the strength, and now you do after you said it was just a couple months.
A few months, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's really like that's the thing, right? Is being able to, like I said, take the strength that you get in the gym and not just use it to huck around machines in the gym and cable machines and barbells and all that stuff's fun. And I love doing all that. But it's really cool when you get to see how you can use it for the rest of your life and how you can use it outside of the gym.
Mhm.
Because that's when you can start using that to actually help other people and do all that fun stuff.
I think one of the like people always there's like, functional fitness. Anyone that knows their stuff, it's like it's a laughable term or it's marketing. But
Yeah, I always ask what function and nobody can tell me. So
right,
that's
right.
how much I
So
believe in functional fitness.
the idea is that even if you just develop your grip strength, right? Let's just say all you did was deadlift. You're going to develop strength in many other ways, but your grip is going to improve. And that is functional, right? Your ability to carry your pellets, your ability to I don't know, hold on to, I don't hold on to something,
Everything,
a cliff and hold
everything.
on, right? It helps. Yes.
Our
So it's,
hands are how we interface with the world. If you make them stronger, you make your connection to the entire world stronger.
so it's just, it gets silly and people are like, oh, you do functional fit. Why? Because you do kettlebell swings or you do, like barbell snatches. Like,
Yeah. Get
okay,
off the Bosu ball, please, before you hurt yourself.
yeah, hey, but it's functional.
Again, what function?
I know balancing on one foot. Okay, you don't need a Bosu ball.
Yeah.
It's,
Cool.
it's
When
very
are you
cool.
doing that in real life? You know, you're not Ethan Hunt. You're not Mission Impossible. You're not going to ever need to balance on a ledge on one foot.
Yet. But if you have to, right?
And if you know what, if you are, you're probably not coming to me for coaching because the government's probably got something much better for you anyway. So doesn't matter.
Feels like some Captain America shit.
I'm just saying. They have that giant facility where they train the Avengers and where they practice everything. So
Besides all of the funniness, that's really cool. So I'm happy for them.
yeah. Funnily, you mentioned Captain America, Superman looking guy over here. I've been going through and watching the first wave or the first couple waves of the Marvel movies. Because I've been they've been playing Iron Man and Avengers at the gym because they have a cardio theater. And so I've been going through slowly because of just how long these movies are. And I've just been following Tony Stark's story. So like I've skipped the Captain America's, the Thor movies. So I've watched Iron Man 1, 2, 3, Avengers 1, 2. I'm in the middle of Civil War right now. And it's interesting watching how like Tony evolves as a character, because obviously that's the focus that I'm seeing right now since I don't see any of the other characters except for the Avengers movie and Civil War, which Civil War probably should have been an Avengers movie. Um, yeah, it's weird. It's interesting seeing, especially Civil War, because the whole thing is Captain versus Iron Man. Like who's like what side do you fall on? And it's interesting because it's so hard to pick a side. And I made a poll about it on Facebook, and it was pretty much dead even. It was 50-50. But I've had a couple conversations about it, and it's the general consensus with the conversations I've had is that it's super hard to pick a side.
I if I had to pick, I would probably go Iron Man.
See, here's the thing. Because there's so much that goes on in the movies. So that's what clouds my ability to make a stark choice, no pun intended. But on the idea of the Accords alone, because that's like the whole crux of the movie, right? Is signing the Sokovia Accords and deciding whether or not the Avengers are going to fold into the United Nations and fall under that chain of command. On the Accords alone, I am Team Cap because I don't like the idea of the government getting into anything in general. So, we already saw what happened with Shield and Hydra, and it just didn't work. So we're going to use a third government entity. Yeah, it's going to work. But by the end, with everything else that goes on in the movies, or in the movie, by the end, the whole fight scene that goes on between Cap and Bucky and Iron Man, I'm like, I don't know that I can really stick with Cap anymore because that was pretty messed up.
I'm not up to speed on
That was a
probably half
rough
of the movies.
that was a rough move. Good. Then I did a good job of not spoiling it. Just kind of told you a little bit of a preview. Um, yeah, if you haven't seen it, I recommend going and watch at least that one, just Captain America: Civil War.
I like it. I think the last one I watched was like Marvel. Was it Marvel? Ragnarok?
Yeah,
That was probably like one of the
that's
last ones
the
I
I don't know
watched.
what is that the third Thor movie,
Hulk,
I think.
Hulk and Thor or something.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
funny one. That's my
the
most
funny
recent, so
the
I'm
funny
so
one.
removed. So removed.
All right,
And
Jack, what's on the docket for this week? What are we talking about today?
why consistency beats motivation.
I dig it. I dig it. You, right before we went live, looked up a definition of motivation, and you read it, and we both agreed that it was completely not helpful for anybody. But
It
since
was
you
just
looked,
it was what was it? A reason or reasons for doing something.
yeah, super bland, super generic, and I'm like, all right, cool. Those
Yeah, it
are
does nothing. It's like
those are words strung together. That's cool, sweet, awesome. Doesn't really tell us anything. But what are we going to be talking about today as we compare consistency and motivation and talk about them?
I think the big ones are going to be environment. Um, it could be people, it could be right, the people that are in your environment, the specific environment you're going to. You could say a gym versus the bar, just for contrast. Um, Setting realistic and attainable goals, realistic timelines, um, figuring out how to be more process oriented. It's not super sexy when someone says that, like, you would be process oriented. Like, that's not sexy. It's not meant to be. Um, and then just looking at your consistency over time and how it leads to not only change, but a topic that we've covered several times is identity change. And that is through the process, that is through practicing patience, that is through creating consistency. Um, and the one that we had discussed, that we're like, we got to add that, is like something that's very compelling to pull you through. Not something that pushes you, but something that is out ahead of you, that's kind of like that glowing symbol of like, you know, I don't want to say motivation, but this is my drive. This is my North Star to what I'm doing. I'm not going to get there right away. I'm not going to get there in a couple months. It might be a couple years out, but that's something that can kind of like draw you in rather than you feeling like you've got to force yourself every day to get out of bed to go do the things you need to do to accomplish what you want to accomplish.
Yeah. The other big thing that I see when it comes to making a compelling goal, and we'll get to it when we get to that section, but it's setting a big goal. And I know that goes in it flies in the face of a lot of general coaching advice now, because the overall idea is right, set smaller goals, and that's fine. But I will make that argument when we get there. But I have a good point and a good argument for making a big goal and using that as a source of motivation.
Mhm. I like doing that. That's what I've done the last couple of years too, was like the 50K.
Yeah,
The year before that was a half marathon trail, like a trail race. These big things that are you have to train for. You really like you could show up and do them, sure, but there's time caps. There's how good do you want to feel
yeah.
during, after.
It's it's actually funny you mentioned the 50K. So like a few years ago, I did a 5K just because, kind of similar to
Mhm.
you doing the 50K, but I didn't train for it. I was just like I went and I ran like 3K 2 days in a row, like a month out, and I was like,
Got it.
okay, yeah. I literally didn't do any other running until I showed up for the 5K, and then I just did it, and I was like, all right, that's done. That's like trying to lose 5 pounds.
Hmm.
That's the level of seriousness that you'll take into losing 5 pounds or losing 10 pounds because it's really not that big a goal.
Where it's 50K, that's a big, that's right.
Yeah.
It's not just a
The
walk
only
on.
way you're gonna make it through a 50K is if you train for it. Like you can't,
Mhm.
I mean, you can just show up and do a 50K. You're not gonna enjoy the next week, but you can just show up and do it.
Especially
Maybe.
with stuff like this, like these examples specifically, it's like it's not, it's like past the point of being healthy. Like if you don't have a general level of fitness or if you only have a general level of fitness, like you're putting yourself in harm's way when you do these things in that kind of way, like you just jump into it cold. Um, so, right, that's why training is important. Mindset, physical adaptations, all that kind of stuff. It goes a long way. So, um, yeah, but let's dive in. One of the first things I mentioned was environments and shaping your success. So kind of like think of it as like the role of your environments. You could say your habits are a reflection of your environment. Um, we've used, again, I said it before, but we've used it in the past too, is like you're going to hang out at a bar with people and drink and eat shitty food, right? Like you can eat the shitty food, you can drink. There's nothing wrong with either of them. It's the how often you do them, and then what is your outlook? What are these people around you striving for? And what do your habits become? Do you start not spending time with your family because you're going to the bar? You start having poor financial habits because you're spending money at the bar. Like it could go on, but it's just a quick way of showing is like your habits and your environment matter a lot. Because if you're going to the gym, after work, like yeah, you're investing in a gym membership, something that's improving your health. And then maybe you meet other people that are like-minded that go on hikes, that cook at home, that, like all these different things. Like you see how all of a sudden it's just like very different paths. Again, I'm playing extremes, but your environment is going to definitely mold your habits.
Yeah, it's something that people talk about a decent amount, but I don't think we approach it with enough weight to really drive home how important environment actually is. The thing about environment is the environment that you set yourself up for, whether you construct it or if you just find yourself there, is going to play into how successful you are with your goals or how successful you are not. So if you are always scrambling to get your gym clothes ready to get to the gym, it's going to be less likely that you make it to the gym because there are going to be a lot of days where you end up forgetting about it or you feel like you don't have time to gather everything together because you're already late for work. But if you just make a slight change and the night before, get your gym clothes ready and just put them in your car or put them by your door so that you just grab them and go the next day, you just by making that one change, you dramatically increase the odds that you get to the gym. If you keep lots of cookies and cake and donuts and all that like at home, you're more likely to eat them. And so if you are a seasoned food tracker, a seasoned food logger, that's really not that big an issue. But if you're brand new and you're just trying to get into the game and you're trying to build some new habits, it's probably not a good idea to have them on hand at least for a while until you make that mental shift and other things start taking over, other better habits like not going into the pack of Oreos and eating an entire sleeve, or not eating half the box of donuts, or not eating an entire handful of Hershey Kisses just because the jar is there. If you're still doing that, the move to make your environment better is to get rid of them for now.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just like how do we remove barriers, right? That's all of what you just described is like when you're first starting, sometimes it's better to completely abstain from the thing to give yourself some time and space so you can be in the moment and think the thoughts, feel the feels, and take a different action.
Yeah. And
Right?
really, on that note, I would even, we talk about removing friction around the things that we want to do. I would also add friction to the things that you don't want to do. So, using the same example of all the baked foods at home, the goal isn't to say that you can't have them, or the goal isn't to say that they're bad. Because if you talk to me for more than 45 seconds, you'll find out I don't think that they're bad. But it's create friction around them. So you want Oreos, fine. You can't keep them in the house, but if you want them, you have to go to the store. And you can only buy a single serving. So you can't buy a whole pack and then come back with three-quarters of it and put it at home. So you either go to a gas station where they sell like single or double servings and have that, or go to the grocery store where they have the same and have that. But you can't keep it at home. And it's the same with like donuts. It's the same for anything that you are trying to cut back on. Just increase friction, make it harder to get the thing.
Mhm. Yeah, so instead of removing the barrier, you're adding one.
Yeah.
And it is helpful to kind of do this in pairs, right? Remove, like, make it easier for one thing, make it harder for the other. It's like a little balancing act. But like you said, get your clothes ready the night before, fill your water bottle, put your keys out, put your wallet, like put everything there. So all you do is hit your alarm turns off, you get up, you grab your shit, and you go. You've got snacks, you got water, you got your money, you're good to go. Makes it that much easier to get to the gym on time. Um, but yeah, it's reducing friction in a lot of ways. If you're it's and right, like I think we do this as coaches quite a bit, is someone's like, well, I can't figure out how to blah blah blah. Like this, I can never make it here on time, or I never have the time. And it's like, okay, pause, let's play detective. Talk me through your day. Let's see where there's holes in your day. What are you doing? What's your screen time? How long did you spend on the toilet? It's like we shift these things, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, well, I went to the bathroom twice today and spent 20 minutes each time. Okay. Like, so we just, let's say, we'll give you a couple minutes on the toilet, but it's like you're getting 10, 15 minutes in one or two chunks back. Okay. So that could have been your prep time to get yourself ready to go to the gym so you weren't in a rush. It's just like it sounds silly, but it's the things like that you need to look at. On top of that is setting dedicated time blocking, time for the gym, because your priorities are really important. And if you're not taking the time to fit them into your day, how do you expect to get the result that you want? And then you're going to complain later because you didn't prioritize what you wanted. It's a weird,
Yeah.
I know it's like a very short cycle, but people get stuck in it, and the woe is me card gets played too often.
Yeah, if your life is really that hectic that you legitimately can't find the time, that's all the more reason to use a schedule, to put it in your calendar. Sit down on a Sunday and just look at your week, add in the time for work, find the times for your workouts, add those in too. If you really want to get down and dirty, add the times for your meals and set alarms for the meals, set reminders for the workouts. You can even set nightly reminders to get your gym bag ready so you don't forget about it and then think about it when you're laying down in bed right as your eyes are starting to close, and then that just ruins you getting to sleep at a in a good mood. So just set an alarm and just go, 30, 45 minutes before you go to bed, make it part of your nighttime routine. Do whatever you do, you got to get to bed. Part of that is getting your gym bag ready for the next day.
I think a way to simplify all of it too is your actions are a direct reflection of your priorities. Your actions are a direct reflection of your priorities. So if it's a bunch of screen time, if it's a bunch of Netflix time, what you're saying is like this is a priority. But over here I'm going to complain about being overweight and my joints hurting and my bowel movements being really terrible because I'm prioritizing these things and not prioritizing these things that allow me to get where I say I want to be. So comes down to what your actions are and what your priorities are. So sometimes you have to kind of remove yourself from your container, right? If you were like, I always think about this, like if you were a jug of milk, right? There's a nutrition label. Take yourself out of the container. Look at your label. What does it say? Like what is the food that you're consuming, right? That gets aligned. The amount of time you spend sleeping, that gets aligned. The amount of stress you have, what percentage are you at out of 100? You have to look at these things. And if you
Yeah.
want to change the container you're in, your body, you need to change the ingredients, the preparation, your priorities, all of these things. And all of a sudden it switches to more sleep, less Netflix, more gym time, different container. The container's changing into something a little sexier, It's like it happens fairly quickly. When I say that, I mean in months, but it happens.
Yeah, and people will come back and talk, maybe in a different conversation, but sometimes as a part of this conversation too. And they'll talk about willpower, not having enough willpower to get through the day. And it's like, okay, cool. That's legit. That makes sense. The easiest way to get around that is doing this, is changing your environment. If you have your gym bag ready to go, you don't really need a whole lot of willpower to remember to grab it on the way out the door. If you have your meals prepped on Sunday for the next few days, you don't really need willpower to choose what to eat for lunch because it's already there. So at that point, if you still prep your meals and you then still don't eat them because you go somewhere else, there's a different issue. It's not willpower. It's something else. But environment is the easiest way to get around the willpower issue. Because the better that you stack the environment cards in your favor, the less you even have to think about willpower, and to a point, the less you have to worry about motivation also.
And like ties in, right? It's the you're the average of the whatever, the five, the 10, the whatever people you hang around with. So like who are you spending the most time with? What environment are you spending the most time in? Suddenly when you're spending time with the right people, or different people, I should say, in a different environment, you'll see that willpower is almost non-existent. You don't have to use it. You just do the things that these other people do that are healthier.
Yeah, nobody complains about having enough willpower to binge watch Squid Game when it comes out, when the new season drops, right? Nobody really talked about being motivated to watch Squid Game. It was just there. It was easy to access. The info on the release was everywhere. So they created the environment to make it easy to watch Squid Game. Put it out. They said, hey, it's here. You can watch it on your phone. You can watch it on your tablet. You can watch it on your computer. You can watch it on the TV. Netflix is baked into most TVs now, too. It's just an app that's there. And so it's integrated in the remote. There's a button that you push, takes you straight to Netflix. They made it easy to get to Netflix. So what are people likely to do? They're going to go to Netflix or Hulu or Disney or whatever buttons are on the remote or whatever apps are on the TV.
Mhm. So your environment matters a lot. So hide that remote with the Netflix button, unplug your TV, buy a gym membership, get a buddy, go to the gym.
If you really want to play this hard, if you really want to play this deep and you go to a smaller gym that has a small staff where like you always see the same people, you can like drop off your remote at the beginning of the day and say like, look, I have to come work out before I can get my remote back. Or like give it to somebody else, give it to like a friend. It doesn't have to be anybody at the gym if the gym is too big, but it could be your gym partner or you guys trade remotes. especially if you work together, you trade remotes every
Just make
morning
sure
when you get to work. And
make
then
sure you
you
don't
don't
have the same TV.
make sure you don't have the same TV. And then you don't trade back until you leave the gym.
Mm. It's almost, and then it just becomes like something you can get excited about, right? Like I worked for this, and I would bet your want or need to go to Netflix would start to become more and more reduced over time because you don't see it as getting you the same result as working on your wellness.
Yeah. But that's just a crazy idea. It would work. It would work,
I
but it
like
is a
it. I
crazy
like
idea.
it. So one of the big things we really want to lean into is setting realistic goals and realistic timelines, which kind of is paired with being patient. Um, a lot of the times, like diets and exercise programs, people are sold on fast results. So they expect fast results and amazing results, right? They see the photo from the person who's a zero to a hero. This was in so many weeks. Look what we did. Like you don't know what was photoshopped. You don't know how unrealistic, right? Which most things are. That's why diets don't last very long because they're not realistic. Same thing with workout fat loss programs. Short term, you can do anything, right? Because you're running on motivation, you're running on hopes and dreams. But guess what? Within the first couple days, that starts to fade. You start to question what you're actually doing because you're realizing, if you ask yourself, can I do this and could I do this exact thing for 5 years? Can I do this for 10 years? You're gonna shit a brick. You're gonna be like, you know what? I can't. I'll keep going. I only have 20 more days. I can do this. You can, and you probably will get, somewhat decent results. But what happens is a lot of people, if they don't get these quick fix results, they get discouraged because they're not seeing results in 2 weeks. They're not seeing results in a month. It's not immediate, so you're not getting it, right? Which is couldn't be further from the truth, especially when we're talking about a human body. But, you know, something that plays into it. I don't know if you want to add.
Yeah, I mean the big thing here is it all takes time. And it takes more time than people think it's going to take because we are advertised to so ferociously by magazines, by social media, by whatever, right? By TV, the news, what all that stuff. And so we learn this supposed time frame that it's supposed to take, and we don't get the whole picture in probably any of those instances. Like we were just talking about Avengers, right? We see, every time a new movie comes out, it's probably going to happen here in probably about 2 weeks when Brave New World comes out or whatever it's called. New World, the new Captain America movie. It's coming out Valentine's Day, which is weird. Um, but there's probably going to be articles that talk about Anthony Mackie's workout, and it's going to show like this is what he did, this is what he ate, blah 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 blah. Because it happened every time for Chris Hemsworth, it happened every time for Chris Evans, it happened for RDJ for Iron Man 1 and 2 because he was pretty decently jacked for those roles. And that's, it happened with Tom Holland. That's just what happens, right? Because they show up, they look great. Same thing happened with Hugh Jackman when he came back as Wolverine for Deadpool and Wolverine last year. And so, you read the article, you say, okay, this is what he did, this is what he ate. And it's like, all right, but they're not presenting the whole picture because they're not talking about the obvious stuff, right? Like, we don't talk about the fact that these are actors that are paid to look a certain way. So they are highly motivated to get in shape because they have, especially in their cases, millions of dollars riding on getting in shape. So if I offered to pay you $40 million to get in shape for this, for whatever, you'd probably crush it too. And you wouldn't look back and nothing would get in your way because it's $40 million. I don't think you got $40 million for that 50K, Jack.
No, I paid.
Yeah, you paid money to do it. So, and I think that's more in line with the general experience, right? And so nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about all the actors having their own chef on staff that just makes their meals for them and just shows up at the set time and is like, "Here's your food." And then they have the coach that shows up at, typically 4 a.m. because that's the magic workout hour, apparently. Let's go work out. Like there's all this stuff that it all costs a lot of money that a lot of people don't have access to, like paying a chef, paying a trainer. Um, like, yeah,
Just
it
if
comes
you
back to the,
pause there, think of how much less stress you would have because you're not making your own meals. The gym might come to you. You might have your own gym. Like these are the things we need to think about. Like they're getting paid to eat, train, and recover.
yeah. Dude, if you're The Rock, part of your movie contract is that you get a gym on the set.
Yeah.
Like he brings the gym to him. And when he was wrestling, he would bring a wrestling ring to the set.
hmm Yeah, you had a whole
Yeah,
Sunday that was a gym.
that would take a lot of stress off. You wouldn't have to worry about the 5 o'clock rush because it's your gym. You wouldn't have to worry about traffic to and from the gym because it's already there.
hmm
It's not really the same. So when you again, but again, that's an extension of the first point. Because they have access to means, they crafted their environment so that success was basically inevitable.
Yeah. So it's just realizing like these things take time.
Yeah, for the rest of us that don't have money to basically uproot an entire gym and move it into our backyard and bring with us a chef and a trainer everywhere we go, it's gonna take a little bit more finesse. It's gonna take a little bit more work on our part. And that also translates to it taking a little bit more time.
Mhm. Not to mention that most people are also natural without any special
What?
supplements. It's just something to consider. Men and women. I think that's something too, is like you were talking about social media before, and how many of these people are taking, you know, their extracurriculars and a needle and it's adding to their physique, but that's what they're getting paid for and they sell it and you bought it and then you wonder why you're not there. It's all because you're not doing what they're doing. You
Yeah,
also look at training age and experience and where you're at and how intense they train, how do they recover, where's their stress at? There's so many different things.
yeah.
So,
Plus, there's, when you finally get to camera, there's, all the camera tricks behind lighting and composure and wardrobe and how all that stuff can enhance your look too.
yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I think the big thing, the take home with that quick point is it takes time. And you kind of have to almost have like a blind self-belief that you can do it, but you have to keep showing up and doing the thing. You have to be consistent enough to get so far. And then when you want to upgrade to the next level, it's like, okay, what else do I need to improve upon and then continue to be consistent with?
Yeah.
Because
The
without
big
that,
the big thing that you said is a belief in the achievement of the goal. And that's true. You need an unshakable belief that you could pull it off. I posted about this, I think, yesterday in my group. That if you don't have a 100% belief that you can achieve the goal, are you really going to push that hard? Like whatever goal you set, you have to believe that you can get there. Because if you think that I have this goal and I'm only like 40% likely to get there, I'm like, all right, I'm not really going to try all that hard because at best I got a 40% chance to get there. So you need to build this habit, and this is one of the habits that can also carry outside of the gym with you too. But you need to build this unshakable belief in yourself and in your goal that you can get there and that it's purely just a matter of time because you can find out what to do. You can find workouts, you can calculate macros, you can shop for those all you want, and that's fine. And once you get on a groove where you do those correctly, then it's just a matter of just doing it long enough that you get there. But as long as you stay on the path and you keep going, you'll get there. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take. And as long as you're not wrapped up in getting there in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, if you just resign that you'll get there eventually, you'll get there. You can speed up the progress to that path depending on how militant you want to be about everything, right? I went from I dropped, where am I now? 23 pounds down from October. but I'm a militant food tracker. Like I start like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I got a second food scale so I could take it with me places because it's smaller.
Pocket scale. Um,
So like that's the level that I'm going to. Not everybody wants to go to that level, and that's fine. But also realize that if you're not going to go to that level, it's not going to happen as fast for you,
mhm.
and that's okay too. Like it's not like it's not a race. Like you'll get there when you get there. Now, if you have health related motivations where it's like you need to lose this weight fast or you might die, guess what? You now have a compelling enough argument that you're going to move mountains to get there. And we'll get to that at the end. But if you don't have anything like that, or you don't have a really strong deadline or a hot reason to really get in shape by a certain time, it's fine. It's okay. It'll take however long it's going to take. Just focus on the basics. Get some walking, get some outside activity, sleep, water, stress management, exercise, protein. Call it a day. Lock those in, and it'll just happen when it happens.
So something that you kind of right in a roundabout way got to was just like it's like you're doing different things, and the hope is that you're doing different things, you're doing new habits long enough that you can start to identify yourself a little bit differently. You can realize that you're challenging old habits, you're challenging old beliefs, right? And this is all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is self-improvement. I'm changing myself. You did the thing long enough. You didn't think it was doing anything, but then all of a sudden you saw a smidge of result because you showed up in a different way just enough.
Yeah.
This makes sense. And it's the idea is like, yeah, there's a bunch of friction when it first starts. You don't believe in yourself when it first starts. And then all of a sudden you find different ways you're becoming more efficient. Other things take less thought. And like this is when you've created a new habit
Yeah.
and you now have proof. You've got a little bit of proof. And that's fire. That's dangerous because all of a sudden that's going to build. But the thing is you have to be able to recognize that you made some change or you got some result. So this is why, right? Like again, as coaches, we're tracking photos, we're tracking measurements, we're using a scale for your body, we're using a scale for food. We're having conversations about how you view things, why you view them that way, so that over time we can start to see change and your speech patterns are different. Your wake up times, your gym sessions, like all these things, the people you hang out with, either more or less, like starts to change. These things that had a bunch of friction now don't. You're far from where you want to be. But how cool is it that you've challenged your old habits and beliefs enough that you've started to have different ones?
Yeah. And a key prerequisite for making any change is that you have to suck at first.
Hmm.
Because otherwise, if you don't suck, you're not really changing anything. Because if you're just doing the things that you're already good at, what are you changing? And for anybody that just heard that and is like, I don't know if I got that in me. If you are capable of walking, guess what? You at one point sucked at something and then got so good at it that now you don't even have to think about walking. If you if you drive a car in general, I was going to say manual transmission, but it works with any car. You didn't jump in the car the first time and just know how to operate everything. But you know now. And if it's a manual transmission, you know how to operate the third pedal. You figured that out. You figured out how to walk. You figured out how to get to school and get home. You figured out how to shop for groceries. Maybe you figured out how to pay taxes, even though they keep changing it every year. So who knows if we ever really know how to. But there's a long line of evidence of everybody being able to figure out countless things in their lives. So what's one more thing that you're adding to it?
It's like you have to show up enough. I think that's one thing that people, it's like a common misconception is that people think, well, it should only take this long. It's like it takes as long as it freaking takes
Yeah.
because your situation is different than the person you saw on Instagram, than the person you saw at the gym. It's like as your own little thought experience, your own little experiment. Someone, I go up to someone that's a little bit older, ask them, like, how you look amazing. How'd you get there? And they're gonna be like, 40 years, 50 years of being consistent. You thought grandma who's like shredded and ripped and super strong, or grandpa, like it doesn't happen in 6 months. It doesn't happen in 2 years. Just like if you ask Tony and I, ask Tony about doing a swanton. It's a really cool move. If you don't know what it is, look it up. But it's like, how many times did you have to practice that before you just said, I'm gonna give it a go and we're gonna see what happens in front of a live crowd? I just shared a video of me squatting 325 pounds for, whatever. I'm like, I look back today at an old video of me squatting like somewhere around there and it was ugly. But I kept showing up and now it's just like, doesn't even look like it's the weight that it is. Like, that's cool, but also kind of scary because it means I gotta go up. But,
Yeah.
you have to continue showing up. It takes so much longer than you think. And we're just talking about like the gym application, but like, anything else.
Yeah. Here's the big challenge behind installing new change, especially as we get older, because this is really what's going on. And it's the simple fact of how our brains are wired. They're not really wired to push us to grow. They're wired to be efficient. So I doesn't like learning new skills because learning new skills is not efficient until you do it enough times that it becomes efficient. But that initial period sucks. And so it feels a lot harder than it probably actually is because our brains are fighting every single step of the way. Because it's like, look, you want to go to the gym and you want to lift this weight, and that's cool, but it would be
I'm used to this.
I'm used to, we usually go pop on Hulu right about now, and that takes way less effort. It's not really going to threaten our chances of survival. Because that's really what it comes down to too, is the brain's trying to keep you alive. And so when you do things that cost more energy and put a lot of strain on the body, the brain freaks out and it's like, we might die here. Let's not maybe die. Let's go do something where we're probably not gonna die.
I like dopamine. Let's sit on our ass and get dopamine. But what your body doesn't realize is that when you put yourself in a strenuous situation, you can get other feel-good hormones while benefiting yourself.
Yeah, it just takes a little bit of work. That's all. And when you practice enough and your brain starts to make that connection of like, oh, when I go here and I do this thing and I go to the gym, I end up feeling good at the end. And that's when you start craving the gym. And that's when you start feeling weird when you miss a workout because your brain is like, yeah, we usually go to the gym now because after that we feel good. Now we're not going to the gym. What the hell's going on here?
Well, and the thing too is like, as you know, like we both, I know we're on the same page with this, is like, because we've been lifting for more than a couple, almost a couple decades now, but it's, if not, oh geez, math. Yeah, it's been a while. But like the older you get, the usually like for a lot of guys, the reason you get into it is because you want to look a certain way. Maybe you're like insecure with how you look, or you're insecure with your strength compared to other people. But eventually it becomes like, yeah, the aesthetics, the strength are nice, but you're in there for the mental benefits. And like you said, like you're craving that because it makes you feel good, but it takes you on another ride you didn't expect, was that it's for your mental health.
Yeah. And the best thing is when it does like at first and for the longest time I didn't have a step goal and I just got, whatever steps I got was just the steps that I got. And I didn't put like a 5,000 step goal or a 6,000 step goal or anything like that. It was just like a whatever I get is what I get. And now that I've been, at first I maybe a few months ago in like mid-October when I was really trying to drop the weight, I set up and I just committed to an 8,000 step goal. And then I signed up with a coach in December and he's like, well, we do 10,000 step goals. And I was like, I barely like eight, but okay, let's do 10. And that was January 30th. So that was like 6 weeks ago. And now I'm at a point now where I've gone from not wanting to track steps at all to now like it legit feels weird if I don't hit my 10,000. And I can almost strangely tell when I haven't moved around enough to get the 10,000. And I'm like, I still have a ways to go. And so I'll look down at the watch and see what it counts. And I'm like, all right, cool. I got like 2,500 left. Let's go.
Becomes much, much easier. Yeah, you get that itch. It's fun.
Yeah.
I like that idea of kind of like like sometimes you need to be pushed into doing something you don't want to do, right? Like you don't want to push for those extra 2,000 steps, but like that's the requirement by the coach. Okay. I think it's interesting. It's kind of a cool approach if you think about it, but he
Yeah.
upgraded what you were doing.
And it's there's a group component too. So there's like a dozen of us together. So it's like, wow, everybody else is getting their 10,000. I can't be the one that doesn't get it. So okay, I gotta go do this thing.
There's something like very similar, right? Like the training I'm doing right now, there's a leaderboard for weights, for times, for all these different things for the training that I'm doing. And my goal is not to be number one, although that'd be cool. Like it's like if I can be in the top 10, I am so happy. Knowing that
Yeah.
there's potentially, 50 plus people in it. But if I can be in the top 10, like we're doing okay. And it keeps my head game where it needs to be, and it gets me more energized, and it's easier for me to go do the things that I need to do that don't necessarily want to do, but
Yeah.
I do them.
Yeah. And that's I mean that's really what that comes down to. Um when we head into our next section, we talk about we go back to, one of our common points of identity shifting. We talk about how to actually connect it to action. And when you look at your leaderboard and getting into the top 10, when you look at me getting 10,000 steps, those are examples of shifting that identity through action. So instead of it's not, the secret, or it's not affirmations where you just look at yourself in the mirror and just say like I'm the person that is in the top 10 of the leaderboard, or I'm the person that gets 10,000 steps. Like, well, it's not about whether or not I'm the person. It's like if I pull up my health app, you can see I got 10,000 steps, or I got 11,000 steps. So like I don't have to repeat any affirmations because I have the proof right there. Just
Mhm.
like you don't need to affirm that you are a top 10 person on the leaderboard. You just go look at the leaderboard and you're like, am I or am I not? That's it.
I think we overcomplicate a lot of things, right? Humans, we like to. We let our mind drift and make up scenarios that aren't real, and I think it is helpful to look at what's the reality in front of you.
Yeah. The thing with that is yes, we tend to overcomplicate things. And I think the reason that we like to overcomplicate things is because the more angles we can put into things, the more twists and turns, the more reasons we can use for why it's not working. Where if you see this clearly right now in general nutrition coaching advice, where everything that everybody says, it still comes down to calories. I don't care. It still comes down to calories. But if you find the right person or you find the right Google article, they will tell you it's hormones, insulin, food dyes, seed oil. It's the gluten, it's the dairy, it's the iron in the meat, it's the cholesterol in the eggs. No, it's not. It's none of those things. It's not. Yeah, you can get a fancy program that's catered to whatever it is you're dealing with, but guess what? It's 98% the exact same program for every other group. You get a training program for women. Guess what? It's 90 like 6% the same as it is for a man.
Yeah. Well, like
Maybe there's a little difference because of the obvious hormonal changes between men and women. Maybe.
the thing too is like when you think of people that are wanting to put themselves out there as professionals, the whole goal is how can I stand out? So they're going to craft something up that allows them to stand out a little bit differently than the next person or have a reason for X, Y, Z. But like you said, the base of it, it's like if it's fat loss is your goal, calories. You
That's
can't,
it.
like, the law of thermodynamics, you cannot beat.
Like,
Sorry.
yeah, I don't care what your thyroid is doing. I don't care what the medications do. They have an effect by changing your metabolism, sure, undeniable. But all they do is they move your base, your maintenance calorie level up or down. A lot of cases they move it down. So guess what? Once you figure out how much they've lowered your metabolism, it still comes down to calories. If you normally burn 2,000 calories and you're on some thyroid medication because there's something wrong with it and it drops your metabolic rate by 300 calories, guess what? Your maintenance is 1,700 calories. Guess what? If you eat 1,500 calories, you will lose weight like clockwork. You don't need a thyroid specific program. That's what the medicine is supposed to be for.
It's otherwise you're just a normal person. Sorry. You
Yeah.
know,
Like,
once you have the medication, like you're set with this specific example, right? Like,
but it's true with almost any other, like any there, there's medications and they lots of them do change a person's metabolic rate. Sure. That just means you have to figure that out. You can still use a calculator to get baseline and at least get in the area because it's
mhm,
still just going to be a percentage off your normal metabolic rate, which means your normal calculatable number. So you start there, gauge what the scale does, and adjust appropriately. And if you spend 2, 3, 4 weeks doing that, you will find your number and you'll be off to the races. So it's just a slight delay, but if you're willing to push through that, you can be in just as good a progress as anybody else after you do that little bit of extra work.
mhm, mhm, mhm. Okay, so I know before the tangent, we were we were how, like, there's identity shift through action, right? A lot of times we think we need to have motivation and all these different things, and it's like, no, you have to start taking an action, which creates results, which creates proof, which, if it's good proof, will create motivation, momentum towards whatever you're working towards, because you're seeing that that action actually built up to something. So, you know,
I'll
I
say
think
all proof is good proof. It
I
just
agreed.
because
You're
just
either
because
doing
it doesn't
one
give
thing
you the
or
result,
another.
yeah, just because it doesn't give you the result you want doesn't mean it's bad proof. It's still good proof because it's telling you that what you're doing isn't working.
Hmm.
So if you are truly serious about wanting what you say you want, you have something to change now. And now you've identified a problem. So what are you going to do about the problem?
But most people will say that they are not the problem. It's something else
Well, those are the
because they're not
people
getting results.
that are stuck and unhappy with the way they look, feel, and think.
Mhm. And that's so this is right. Like, it's one of those things, like, some people will continue to show up even if they feel like results aren't happening. But other people, like you said, is like, sometimes, like, you have to have conversations with someone who's been through it, someone that knows better, because your mindset could be you physically could be doing the right things, but your mindset holds you back. So if you can have a conversation so you can see things through a different lens, very, very quickly, you'll start understanding yourself, your environment, and others, and start getting results. So sometimes that lens needs to be changed out for you because you don't know how to change out the lens.
Yeah. And it could literally just be as simple as something that you just don't realize that you're not doing appropriately. You could have a good macro plan, you could have a good workout, you could be nailing your macros and giving maybe like a 50% effort in your workouts. But to you it feels like 100 because it's harder than it's harder than any workout that you've done before. And so to you it feels like the workout should be working because it is harder than the last workouts that you've done. But you're still not right. Let's just use an RIR based program as a good example. You're still not pushing close enough to failure. You may think you are, but you're still not. So you need to spend time practicing what that actually feels like and using that to update what failure feels like for you so you can actually execute the program effectively. Or you could be like a lot of people that don't think alcohol has calories and are stumped about their weight loss. Yeah, vodka doesn't have calories because it's clear.
Right?
And
And Sprite
then,
has no sugar in it.
yeah, and then you figure out, oh, the shot of vodka has like 70, 80 calories. Oh, so does tequila. Oh, but then when I add in the sour mix to make it a margarita, Now all of a sudden it's like a 500-calorie drink. Weird.
And you had a lot of margaritas.
And then when you have two, three margaritas and you try to go work out the next day, even though it feels hard, it's still not hard enough because you're actually just dehydrated and otherwise not properly fueled for the gym. And so you're still not pushing your muscle hard enough to get it to really do anything. And then you wonder why you're stuck.
Mhm.
So the proof is there as to why it's not working. The proof is
Right.
the margaritas. The proof is the lack of prep for the gym. It's good proof. You may not like it, but it's good proof. What are you going to do about
Figuring
it?
it, it's figuring out how to work with it too, right? It's not like diets work. Diets work. But it's figuring out why you weren't able to sustain it. That's usually what it is. Or these, X amount of week fat loss challenges. They're not sustainable for one reason or another. They work for some people because some people find a way to make it sustainable. Maybe they just have thicker skin than you, like there's different ways around it. But what didn't work and why? Why was it not sustainable?
Yeah.
That's what you have to look at.
And that's the
So,
conversation that I don't think a lot of people have is why didn't it work? They just go like, well, it didn't work, throw it in the trash.
yeah.
Okay,
But
but
I'm
there's
revisit it
data
in six
there that you're
months.
throwing away with it.
Right. But then they'll revisit it in 6 months because they saw a little bit of weight movement that one time. They don't understand it, but they're going to do it again because it worked.
Yeah. It worked. Yeah. Keto worked before and I lost 25 pounds. So even though I put on 40 since I stopped, I'm going to go back to it because it worked. It worked so well that I actually gained 15 pounds.
Please do. Let us know how that goes.
Yeah.
So the overarching theme, right? Actions help to change identity. The more action you take, the more your brain kind of like sees it as who you are, right? And then all of a sudden you start changing. It's
Yeah.
not just about what you do, it becomes who you are.
Yeah. James Clear has a fantastic quote in Atomic Habits about this. I don't have the book with me, but essentially the idea is that every action you take is a vote for the person that you want to become. And it doesn't matter what the action is, but it is voting for, it is moving you in one direction or the other. So if you are going out drinking every night, you're not really voting for a healthy person. And if you are always voting to skip the gym and go watch Netflix, or skip the gym and just do anything else that's not the gym, for whatever reason, it's traffic sucks, gym's crowded, you're sore, whatever, you don't have your clothes, whatever excuse you're gonna come up with to try to give yourself an out for not going to the gym, like that's fine, but you're also voting to be the person that doesn't go to the gym. And that's gonna add to the time that it takes for you to not just get to your goal, but for that mindset to change into a person where fitness now becomes more second nature instead of always having to fight against yourself.
Yes. Yeah, it's finding how you can identify, I think is a big piece too, is like what can you tune in with, what can you identify with what you want to become. You might not feel like you're there yet, but like what's the sliver, you know? Um, so I think the biggest thing here that we're seeing is when you are able to identify and take certain actions, whether you want to or not, whether you're excited about it or not, is that it makes motivation irrelevant. Because your actions identify or like, align with your identity more, right? Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be a one-to-one ratio. It's like you're trying, you're working on it. But then it starts to not feel like it's effort to do those things anymore.
Yeah. And really that takes us into our last point, which is using a goal that's compelling enough that it naturally pulls you forward into getting to your goal and it makes it that much harder that anything else gets in the way.
Mhm.
And like I mentioned before at the top of the call, I think an area for improvement in general when I see goal setting is we try to temper down people's goals. We try to and this is not just health and fitness related. I just see this everywhere. we try to get people to make their goals more realistic or more attainable or more, right? Whatever, all the stuff that the SMART acronym stands for, right? And we do that to with good intent because we don't want people to set themselves up for disappointment, frustration, and all that. And that's fine, I guess. But we're leaving something on the table by taking away those big goals, by taking away those faraway goals, which is if you have a big goal, you're more willing to do big goal things. So if our goal is to lose 10 or 15 pounds, we'll make some changes, but a lot of times that 10 or 15 pounds can go pretty quickly, especially because a lot of it's water. So you don't really have to change much. And a lot of times that's pretty transient amount of weight for people. So you really don't have to change anything to get there. But if you are coming from a much heavier set position, you've got to lose 80 pounds. And their goal is, I want to lose 80 pounds. I want to lose 100 pounds because my doctor said I got to get my shit together fast or else I'm in for a real rough patch of my life. That person is going to move some mountains to get that weight down. And even if they don't get to the 80, even if they don't get to the 100, even if they get halfway there, they drop 40, they're going to feel fantastic. Their blood work's going to improve tremendously. And that progress that they'll get from 0 to 40 and that habit change and that identity change that happens from 0 to 40 is going to set them up so 40 to 80 happens almost automatically. And I think we rob people of that, for lack of a better word, by trying to talk people away from big goals. Like when I started training back in like high school, before wrestling Tony came around, like I was trying to look like Goku, like I was trying to look like a Super Saiyan dude. And there's still times in my life where like I see, especially when like Dragon Ball Super came out, I'm like, I think I could still get there. I understand that logically I can't because he's animated and he just looks however the artists want him to look. I get that, but still, and he's a common source of inspiration for a lot of people right now lifting because you see tons of Dragon Ball gear throughout every gym you go to. But like that's the goal. It's like, bro, I'm trying to like, what was his height? What was his weight? Like I looked that up countless times. I'm like, all right, he's like 5'9". They say he's like 160, 170 pounds. I'm like, all right, bet I could get there. And like that's like I wanted the traps, right? I wanted the traps, I wanted the shoulders. I was like, let's go. And then like, but like that's the big goal. So I'm like, let's go make that happen, right? And it was a fun goal. And then you make a huge jump cut. You get to, this past October for me specifically, right? Where I see the pictures of me from that show in Las Vegas, New Mexico, and I'm like, I really don't like the way I look. And I'm like, I want to go from that picture and I'm trying to get to single digit body fat. That's a big jump. It was a big
Mhm.
jump from where I was. But it was big enough that I was like, Thanksgiving, what? I don't care. I'm still tracking my food. My birthday, what? I don't care. I'm still tracking my food. Christmas, I'm still tracking my food. Spending a day in New York, spending 3 days in New York, I'm still tracking my food. I don't care.
Mhm.
Oh, well, it's probably going to be easier if I take a food scale with me to make sure that I'm logging and weighing things properly. Bet, let's go.
Mhm. I think one of the biggest things is like whatever the goal is, it needs to be uncomfortable. It needs to
It
feel a
does.
little scary. It needs to make your stomach drop every time you think about it because you care that much. That's what that is like you give a shit. Now do something about it, right? But like we've talked about, is like if you're not willing to do some of those actions, your identity's never gonna shift. And what Tony and I can both promise you is like we have set out for big goals, whether it's in business, and it's like one of those things that's always searing in your brain. Business is a little different than some other stuff, but like wrestling and lifting and like I signing up for a half marathon, a couple years ago, signing up for the 50K last year. Like it gets easier to get into these things because you now have proof you can do the hard thing, you can make it work in your life. But if you've not taken any action or any action recently, you have no recent proof that says you can do it. So why would you believe it?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
have to move through that and do something.
if I tell you that you have a month, right? Today's January 30th. If I tell you have till February 28th to make $50, that's pretty easy to come by between now and in February 28th. It's pretty reasonable that if you're in America, if you're in North America, you probably make $50 in a month. But if I tell you you must make $5,000 by February 28th, there's some big moves you have to make. That you got to do some very specific things to get to 5,000. You got to find the right job. You might have to develop some skills really fast to put you in a position to make that kind of money. But guess what? The time, when you are starting out, you're not going to have a lot of money, especially if you have to build skills. But what you have to do to get from 0 to 2,000 is going to help get you from 2 to 5 really fast. And when you get from 0 to 2,000, you're going to be so motivated because you didn't think it was possible that you're just going to, if nothing else, massively scale up your efforts on the things you've already done, and you'll just get to 5,000 by that without even having to learn any more skills, just refining and getting better.
Mhm.
It's the exact same thing. But if your goal is not big enough to get to five or even $10,000, let's say in a month, it's just going to be, it's whatever. It's easy enough to get there. It's a good enough time frame. You might not even, if you're trying to get to $50, you might not even start trying until February 24th. You might do what I did for the 5K and you just go play around for like a day or two and you're like, I'm just going to show up and just run.
And it proves that
Cool.
you can at least do something, and then it might prove like, well, if I could do that, I wonder if I trained,
Yeah,
that mean I'm capable of.
exactly. So
So,
I think picking a big goal, maybe even one that's slightly unrealistic, could be helpful as long as you keep yourself grounded in the fact that like you recognize that it's unrealistic, but it's still a fun thing to chase.
that's me right now with the tactical games. There are so many things that just like thinking about it now, I'm like, I don't stand a chance.
Yeah.
When it comes to like the gun stuff. But like the physical side of things, I'm like, I know I could hang. Like I could, like right now, I could probably hang pretty okay. But that's why I started training 7 months ahead of time. That's why I signed up for the competition tier that I did because it wasn't the lower level. I went for like the mid high level where I'm like I'm likely gonna get my ass handed to me, but I'm willing to do that to learn
Yeah. But
because
here's
then
here's
I can see what I have to build off of.
and here's the thing. So you go mid high, and let's say you get good enough to do okay in that group, or even if you come in like the bottom half, right? You're still just wherever. You're still gonna come in at a higher base capability by the time the games come around than you would if you had just said, I'm just gonna sign up for the bottom group
Hmm.
and I'm just gonna train for the bottom group. And maybe I'm already there in some areas. There's just some specific skills I need to hone in and develop, and that's fine. I'll just put my efforts on that. Whereas if you set yourself up in the mid-high group, you're now going to be forced to develop all the skills because you have to push yourself in all those areas in order to be competitive there.
And like, especially for, I mean, for anything, right? It's finding deeper than you have to find the reason deeper than like, oh, I just want to lose weight or I just want to win. It's like, no, like what does achieving this do for you? How does this change you as a human? How does it allow you to become the next best version of yourself? So, it's like like why do you want to work out? Why do you want to lose weight? So I can, pick up my kids. So I can pick up my grandkids. I can pick up all three of my grandkids at once,
Yeah.
and run around the yard with them. Like it's those kinds of things because then all of a sudden you have an emotional tie to it. You can picture, right? Picture that environment where you're carrying around your grandkids with your kids' kids. There's just all these different things that it just stems off of. So you have to create that so it goes super deep. So you actually have something to anchor yourself off of.
Yeah. The deeper that you can connect it to, the bigger you can go.
Mhm.
And the bigger you can go, the more of a tank you'll be as you make your way to that goal. So like for me, when it comes to dropping fat, like my reason is there are clear reasons and then there are not clear reasons that are not apparent. The clear reason is like well, I'm on TV every month. I'm trying to look real good to be on TV every month. So there's that. But the other side of that is that you'll never see by looking at any of my performance or anything on TV is I also want to age better than the people around me. I also want to, get to like 50, 60, 70 and still feel fantastic. And I generally just want to be overall healthy, just in general. Like I don't want my body to be the reason that I can't do something. If it's the mind, fine. At this point, that's kind of a lot. That's becoming an easier one to get over. Thanks in pretty significant part to the Swanton bomb. Um,
Cool. But yeah, like the big things, right? It's like you have to take some sort of action because if you don't take any action, there's no way you're going to change your environment. There's no way you can test your own habits to see is there something better, right? So you have to do something differently to break out of the mold that you're in. As cliche or dorky as that might sound, is like you have to do something and then you get a result. If it's a good result, then you have more momentum in the right direction. If you got a bad result, like we talked about before, that's data. Okay, what did I do? Why
mhm.
did I get here? Oh, I got here because I did this. This is not where I want to be. Okay, take another action, see where you get, create more confidence, create more momentum in the right direction. So, you know, start with small changes. Like we talked at the beginning, it's your environment. Do you change your environment, which leads to into changing who you hang around with, which leads into changing your habits. And all of a sudden you're having more success, and it almost feels like you didn't have to put any extra effort besides changing your environment. Um, and then over time, because you're really patient, you start having more success, and it doesn't feel as hard, or you start to choose the harder, more challenging thing because you start seeing even more results more quickly because you're doing the challenging thing. It's weird how that works. So, right, you keep doing these things over time, you then quickly identify as the person that does those things. And sometimes people don't realize, they get stuck in this loop. It's like, well, I don't do that. But then you look back, you're like, oh, I'm doing it. I've been doing it. That's why I am where I am.
Yeah.
It sounds really weird. And I catch myself in that sometimes too. I'm like, I'm not the person that does that. And I'm like, shit, I just did the thing. Oh, I do that every day. Damn it. I like, um, when someone says something to you, and then you're like, oh, I don't do it that often. And then you're like, that's a daily thing. I guess,
Yeah.
it sets you apart.
Yeah.
So
Really the easiest way to solve this is write down your goal. Make it big. Really make it a little unrealistic for who you are right now. Write down your goal, write down maybe two, three things that you think will get you there and just focus on doing those. That's it every day. That's all.
mhm. Yeah,
And on
that's
that
it.
note,
Hit it.
Jack, you had more. Go, 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 go.
No, I was just gonna say, it's just like you have everything you need to make the change. You just have to do something. Like you
Yeah.
have the ability to do it, and when you do it yourself without the external help, it is like so much sweeter, but it is even that much sweeter if you can share it with someone in making changes.
Yeah.
That's all.
Honestly, that's a much better note to end on than the way I ended it. So, on that much better note, Jack, if anybody's got questions about consistency, about motivation, about building a good environment for themselves, where can they find you to ask you questions?
Facebook, Jack Sullivan, or Instagram. It's gonna be modern__strength. Turbo, Tony, Davis. Where can you be found?
You can find me on a few places. You can find me on Facebook at Tony Davis. You can find me on Instagram at Tony Davis Coaching. You can also now find me on Threads at Tony Davis Coaching because I'm making a good push there as well. If you want to see me do cool half naked things where I attack other people's body with my body, you can head to the Duke City Championship Wrestling Instagram and YouTube pages where you can see me do exactly that on a regular basis. Um, but that's not going to be the fitness side. If you want the fitness side, just go all Tony Davis coaching stuff.
I think it's great.
And so, if you watched live, I know we had Gabe Rodriguez on, so thank you as always for being here, Gabe. We love you, man. If you're watching live, we appreciate you. If you only watched the part, we still appreciate you. If you watch this in the future on YouTube, we still appreciate you as well. And we will be back next Thursday with a new episode of Made of Metal.